Welcome to Cape Ann Report. I'm your host, Maureen Elward. Cape Ann Report is a weekly program that covers events and things that are happening here on Cape Ann. For this show, I'm speaking with Mary Ellen LaBianca and Bob Whitmarsh from the Gloucester Historical Commission, and we're going to talk about really interesting, awesome stuff that's happening in Dogtown. Welcome to Cape Ann Report.
Thank you for having us, Maureen.
It's lovely to have you
Thank
here. You're here to talk about what's going on in Dogtown. There's a survey happening and there's mapping going on. And as part of the Gloucester Historical Commission, you've been working on a national historical designation for Dogtown. Mary Ellen, let's start with you. What is happening?
What's happening is we're examining Dogtown to see if we can nominate it to the National Register of Historic Places. And this is a Historical Commission initiative based on past recommendations. And we decided to follow through on those recommendations, which said that Dogtown is eligible. It's eligible because it has features in it that are historical and cultural that relate to our history, our heritage.
And such the things as Dogtown Commons.
Right.
So what's up there?
Well, it's not just the Dogtown Commons, the cellar holes. It's also the Boulder Trail and the ancient pad, the historical paths that people used in the 17th century, and their pastures and the piggery and some of the boulders which have significance, cultural significance, like Whale's Jaw and Peter's Pulpit, and the place where James Murray was killed by his bull, and so on. And these are the stone walls, and these are some of the features that would be included in the National Register District.
Mm-hmm. So how wide a space are you looking at? I mean, Dogtown spans Gloucester and Rockport.
Mm-hmm.
It is the heart of Cape Ann, but I'm interested to hear what you and Bob have to say about how big it is. Bob?
It's pretty massive. I think it's between 300 and 400 acres. And there's the Dogtown Common, which is a settlement, and then there's Dogtown, which goes out further.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a part of it that probably will not be covered because it goes down to the water. That will be another project in the future. But there's a lot here to do. And it is the core of the island that Gloucester and Rockport share. And we both have ownership in this Dogtown area. And it is something that both Rockport and Gloucester Rockport has joined us, the Historical Commission there, and the Board of Selectmen have supported the effort of getting it on the National Historic Register, which is very important, I think, for a place like Dogtown.
Mm-hmm. Well, it makes sense. It
does.
Really does make sense.
It does.
Yeah, it's such a beautiful place.
Yeah.
People, if you don't go up there, you don't realize what's there. So it would include, the Babson Reservoir and everything.
Right. Yeah.
Yep.
It's very important. We depend on its watershed, and it also creates an open space where wildlife can exist, and also for recreational, for us to be able to go there and enjoy it as well. Mm-hmm. So I think it's very important that the awareness that the National Historic Register will bring and the improvements that will be made so that we have better access to it will, I think, maintain it better and protect it. And that's very important when you have a space like this that it gets protected.
Yeah, so it's a little bit of a secret spot, in some ways, but this would really give it added significance with a National Historic designation.
It's an honor to be on the National Register.
Right.
It's an honorary designation, and it makes people consider an area more and use it more, which then leads to people caring for it better.
And it brings people to our area.
Right. Oh yes,
And-
very
and-
attractive for
Yeah.
tourists as well as residents.
Right.
And we are happy to be collaborating with Rockport, and there are many other groups involved in the effort.
Who are those other groups?
Those include, for example, the Dogtown Advisory Committee, Gloucester's Open Space and Recreation Committee, the Cape Ann Trail Stewards, Friends of Dogtown, the Rockport Rights of Way Committee, and the Team Gloucester, which is a recreational group with runners, and a lot of volunteers who responded to the publicity that we've done so far. And on the 14th, 15th, and 16th, the team of archaeologists that we've hired will be here in Dogtown. They will be conducting their survey. They will be trying to determine what the boundaries of the district should be and what the features should be that will be included in that in the district.
Why is the boundary so important?
It's a complex issue because of ownership by both the city and the town. There are some parcels where ownership is unknown, and there are some parcels where there are private owners, and so the boundaries. There will be criteria. For example, they can't really follow the quarry railroad tracks out to the coves where the stone sloops were, because it would extend the boundary too far. So there will be questions of how to cut off, or where to cut off, or what to include and what not to include. And so that will be pretty tricky. I'm pretty sure that they will include to the north at least Whale's Jaw, for example, and the historic path that parishioners took when they went from Annisquam Village to the church in Sandy Bay before Annisquam had its own church, that kind of thing. Those will be the characteristics that they'll be looking for and the criteria they'll be using for what to include.
It's so much fun to think about these, the ways people used to live, and that Dogtown was this place where it had a settlement and that there was activity. And now we're all developed along the coast, and it's still preserved.
It's a miraculous that Dogtown still exists as it does. It really is wonderful, and a testament to the love for Dogtown that the people who live here have had for a very long time.
That's right.
That it has remained pretty much undisturbed.
Even more important to have this designation, or this, have it on the historic register,
and for it to be treated as conservation land, which it is. Yeah.
Right, and there's so many things that can be done once it's placed on the National Register. Right.
Being on the National Register would make it attractive for investors and grant funders, so that people who were doing projects in the future would be able to say, this is a property that's on the National Register, and we need funds to do this or that or whatever to maintain or improve it, or something like that.
So it's valuable. This is purposeful and significant.
It is.
So you have a meeting coming up on November 29th, and this is a public meeting, again, to drive awareness. Tell me a little bit more about the purpose of this meeting and who will be there and why it's important that the public know about it.
Well, the meeting is a public informational meeting. It's to make sure that everybody knows what the National Register program is about and what it does and what it doesn't do. And the speaker will be the director of the Massachusetts National Register program, whose name is Betsy Friedberg, and she will present and give the explanation and answer any questions that people may have about it. There tend to be some misconceptions about it because people confuse it with other districts, such as historic districts, but a National Register district is not that. It's a different thing. And so she will explain that, and she'll have slides to explain.
Yeah, that's very important, to have that understanding of what it is,
what
and
it is and
not.
what it isn't, and what it means and what it doesn't mean.
Right.
Yeah.
So the community is going to want to know about this. That's why it's significant, right? And the meeting, where is it going to be held?
City Hall.
So Gloucester City Hall,
yes,
in the auditorium?
Yes.
Okay, and it's on November 29th at 7 p.m.
Right.
in the auditorium?
And as much as giving out information, we're also looking for the public to give their input, because that's it's an important thing to bring all the ideas together so we can do this the right way.
Yeah.
The archaeologists will then present their plan to the public and say, here is what we think the boundary should be based on our survey, our preliminary survey, and here's the features that we think we would include in that district. And then the people who are at the meeting will be able to respond to that and
So
give
if-
their feedback on
So
that.
if people really feel,
Right.
passionate about certain elements of
Right.
Dogtown, then they should go to this meeting and to see if whether or not those aspects of Dogtown are going
Yeah.
to be included.
I'm
I mean,
anticipating,
it sounds
yes.
like most of the important parts of Dogtown are going to be included.
We hope so.
Yes.
Yeah, we don't know what challenges or impediments they might come across when they do things, or what jurisdictional things there may be. But their mandate is to include as much as possible of the heart of Cape Ann in the designation. So we'll look forward to it.
It sounds like a
Yeah.
fascinating process. And Bob, I
Yeah.
wanted to ask you about what the stepping stones are. So if you're doing this mapping and survey process,
Mhm.
and then there's the meeting, the public meeting, what happens after that?
Well, it's going to be presented to the state board, and then the state board will either recommend or not to recommend it go on to the National Park Service to be declared as a National Historic Register listing. And I think something as nice as this project, I don't see that there's going to be any problem with anything in that process. I think it's a very exciting process. I think there's a lot of interest. There's a lot of people that are interested. I think the meeting on the 29th, there'll be a lot of people there that will weigh in positively, and I think that'll all support the effort.
And when might you hear, or when might we hear that we would, Dogtown?
I think that'll probably take about a year.
So
Yeah.
sometime next fall,
Yeah.
perhaps?
Well, the study won't actually be, the contract that we have with the people doing the archaeological survey is until it runs out in June. That is the time that they have all their information put together by that time, and then that's when it'll be presented to the state board. And then from there, and you have to wait for these hearings, so then it goes to the National Park Service. So that's, I would say it probably is not going to happen in 2018, probably more like 2019.
So there's some time in between, but this is the important time to step in and speak up and participate and in this meeting on the 29th.
Right,
Yeah.
November
right.
29th.
The information we compile from this is very important to the documentation, and this is the stage we're in now, is to get it documented, so that we know what we have to know what we're presenting, and that information is very important, that we get as much in there as we can. There's a lot to put in there, and we want to get it in there.
Certainly, it was such a huge space. Well, everyone should be excited about this.
Very exciting.
It's
And
very exciting.
An article was in the Gloucester Daily Times just the other day, and we've been flooded with phone calls from people wanting to help.
Really?
And the archaeologists were so amazed. They said they never get this kind of a response. They're astonished that there's such a strong response in a community, and they've asked us to actually keep the number of trail guides to a minimum.
They have to do their work.
They have to do their work.
Let them
That's
do
right.
their
Yeah.
work.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, Marianne Lepanaka, thank you so much for having me, for being on Cape Ann Report. And Bob Whitmarsh, it's a pleasure always.
Same here.
Good luck with everything on
Thank
the
you.
29th.
Thank
Until
you
the
very
next
much.
time on Cape Ann Report, take care.